U.S. Congress pondering major decisions, health care, more troops to Afghanistan, financial reform, and voters will soon be deciding whether their representatives and senators should be re-elected. We're questioning Iowa's 4th District Congressman Tom Latham on this edition of Iowa Press.
Funding for Iowa Press was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation, the Iowa Bankers Association for personal, business, and commercial needs. Iowa banks help Iowans reach their financial goals.
On statewide Iowa Public Television, this is the Friday, October 9th edition of Iowa Press. Here is Dean Borg.
Tom Latham has been representing Iowa's 4th Congressional District for 15 years, first elected in the 1994 Republican Contract with America sweep into a congressional majority. Now in his 8th term, Congressman Latham is serving in the House Appropriations Committee and several subcommittees, including agriculture. Congressman Latham's 4th District includes central Iowa, that's the Ames region and somewhat south, up to Mason City in north-central Iowa, then eastward along the northern Minnesota border counties to Decorah and Lansing in northeast Iowa. Congressman Latham, welcome back to Iowa Press.
Great. It's great to be with you, Dean.
Nice to have you back. And across the Iowa Press table, Associated Press senior political writer Mike Glover and Radio Iowa News Director Kay Henderson.
Congressman, you've come under criticism for some of your fundraising practices. You have formed a leadership PAC under the acronym of FARM. Some of your critics say about a quarter of the money in that PAC was spent for you to travel to exotic places like Palm Springs. How do you answer it?
Well, I'm very proud of the efforts that we have to try and help my colleagues in the Congress itself and candidates here in Iowa for their election, because the issues are so critical before this country as far as trying to change the direction, hold down spending. Every one of the members from Iowa in the Senate and the House have leadership PACs, and some of which Senator Harkin actually has 2 of them, one where he spent about 80% on travel. My efforts, over 60%, go to help other candidates. I have a broad base of support, well over a couple thousand people supporting those efforts to help Republicans get elected.
Does there need to be new restrictions on these kind of PACs and how you can raise money and what you can use it for? Because your critics say that you get a lot of contributions from people like big pharmaceutical companies that pay for your travels, and we shouldn't really be surprised you're opposed to health care.
Well, I think transparency is everything. And certainly there are efforts that we need to put forth to have it more transparent, so there's reporting out there so everyone knows what's going on again. But again, my efforts and that, there's a broad base of support, and those few individuals or whatever that is really such a small part of it. I'm worried about changing the direction of this country today.
So the only thing you think needs to be changed is perhaps a little more transparency, better reporting, things like that, or do you think the current system's okay?
Well, no, transparency I think is everything. Let people decide whatever, if they like what you're doing or not, if it's transparent. And I fully believe in reporting everything immediately, and that's part of the system.
You do not serve on either of the House committees which have passed a health care reform plan, but you serve in the House and will soon be voting upon a health care reform bill. Do you support the so-called public option?
Well, after doing 20 town hall meetings in August and hearing from constituents, and we just did a survey, over 12,400 of my constituents responded to that, and overwhelmingly, about 60% say no to the public option. What they do believe is that we've got to transform the way health care is delivered, health insurance today. Cost is the big factor, and what we're seeing in the bills today that are before Congress actually increase the cost to individuals themselves to purchase a policy, and the public option really does nothing to help. And in fact, in Iowa, what they're going to do with the public option would be to lock in the Medicare reimbursement rates to a much larger percentage in Iowa, and we're already at the bottom as far as reimbursement. And what has happened in the past is the private insurance, the cost shifting goes on to subsidize the healthcare providers because of the low Medicare reimbursement. And what we're going to do is have more people paid at Medicare. We're going to find out that we're not going to have, especially in rural Iowa, any kind of health care available or doctors out there if that goes through.
You said healthcare costs are too high.
Right.
If there is not, in the words of some people, a public option to compete with private insurance, there's no incentive or competition there to drive down private health insurance rates. How would you drive down rates?
Well, those folks are the same folks that think the government should do everything and take over health care entirely. And what I think we should do and have proposed, I have a bill in Congress that will do this as far as having competition in the marketplace itself, allowing individuals to purchase health insurance across state lines, to have association health care plans where people can pool together small businesses to have leverage to create real competition in the marketplace rather than have the government come in and have a huge subsidy that's going to raise taxes dramatically on Iowans and cut the Medicare. I think it's just the wrong way to go.
Let's talk about the potential risks that Republicans can face here. Most polls I have seen show that a majority of Americans want, quote, health care reform, although you can argue about what that means. Is there a danger for Republicans to become viewed as the party of no, simply standing in the way of health care reform?
Well, I don't think so, because like my bill that I have in Congress, there are proposals. The problem today is in Washington that no one's listening to each other. I mean, what we have said for months, and the leadership in the House wrote a letter to the president, to the other leaders on the Democrat side, saying, let's get together, work together. And I think what the American people, certainly Iowans in my district from the town hall meetings, want us to do is step back, work together to find real solutions that are going to solve the problem rather than all this partisanship. But no, we have proposals out there, and unfortunately, it's just like most of the bills that have come before Congress, there has not been the ability, or it's been allowed for Republicans to have input.
But you're not satisfied with the status quo?
Oh, no, we have to do something, absolutely, because the system today has excluded so many people simply because they cannot afford or because they have pre-existing conditions, don't have access to health insurance. So we've got to do something.
Mike mentioned the GOP in opposition to this bill. Sarah Palin identified this bill as having death panels in it. Senator Grassley didn't use the phrase death panels, but he said that there is a legitimate fear that the public should have about pulling the plug on grandma. You at a town hall meeting in Indianola told people there are no death panels in the bill. Are you satisfied with the way that Republicans have been handling the opposition to this bill?
Well, I think there's some interpretations out there that are incorrect, certainly. And what I want to do is have an honest debate about what is actually in the bill, what is not. There are a lot of concerns that people have that you do have in the House proposal, the H.R. 3200, a panel that will have no congressional oversight, has no oversight as far as courts or being able to have litigation, anything that's a panel that makes all the decisions on the public option without any kind of outside oversight, and that there's concern about that.
But you say you want to have a rational discussion about health care, and you don't want to have all this. Haven't Republicans contributed to this irrational discussion by doing things like pointing out that their death panels were going to pull the plug on grandma? How much blame does your party bear for that lack of a reasoned discussion?
Well, I think there are statements made on both sides that maybe shall we say are not accurate. Okay, I mean, when the president came out and said that AARP was supporting his plan and all this, which there was no plan to begin with, and they had specifically said no, they weren't supporting any particular piece of legislation. I think there's enough on both sides. And this is what the problem is in Washington today, is that people they want to play the partisan politic game. Let's sit down together and work for the American people. That's what the people told me in my town meetings. That's what people are saying across this country. Let's solve the problem rather than all this bickering going on.
What do Republicans have to show for the town hall meetings? Wasn't the angst that was on display at those town hall meetings about incumbents of either party, not just Democrats, but Republicans as well?
Oh, I think that's true, but also, Kay, I will tell you, I did a series of town hall meetings back in June and early July. My crowds then were 4 or 5 times larger than ever before. And this was before health care became an issue. what people are concerned about and really are scared today about is the fact that we have a huge expansion of the federal government, spending way out of control, $1.4 trillion one-year deficit this year. They're worried about their kids, about their grandchildren. They're worried about the government coming in and running businesses. They're worried about taxes going up.
What are they trying to tell you? What did they tell you? I mean, yes, they're dissatisfied, they're frustrated, but what do they want?
Well, there's a lot of coming out of Washington and not much that people like. And the fact of the matter is there's outrage going back to the TARP bailout bill, the Wall Street bailout bill last year, stimulus package, $787 billion that hasn't worked. Obviously, we were guaranteed that if it was passed, unemployment wouldn't go above 8%. Now it's 9.8% and rising. The spending, the way Congress operates today, I mean, we're getting bills in the middle of the night that are 1,400 pages long and no one has a chance to read them. That's what people are upset about, is that the government, the intrusion of the federal government, the spending that's going on, they fear exactly what's coming out of Washington.
Speaking of bailouts, the agricultural industry, particularly pork producers and dairy producers, are in deep financial trouble right now. A lot of that pork and dairy is concentrated in your district, up through north central Iowa and over to the Mississippi.
Up in your country, up there, Fresco.
Yeah. That's right, in northeast Iowa. Yeah. But what role does the federal government have in something like that?
I think certainly as far as policies that are in place, as far as trying to help and assistance to those producers is very appropriate. Some of the things that can happen, especially in the pork industry, the trade has basically shut down international trade and purchasing from foreign countries. What we need to do, I think, is send a message by passing things like the Colombian Free Trade, the Korean Free Trade Agreement, to actually open up markets for us, would send a large signal. And we're also purchasing pork and also giving subsidies to the dairy producers today also that are trying to help them. It's not going to be enough to save them.
But is there an immediate need? That is, there were bailouts for financial institutions. Mm-hmm. I don't think that pork producers and dairy producers are asking for bailouts, quote. But is there more that the federal government should be doing?
Well, just this week in the Ag Appropriations Bill, there was $350 million in that for dairy farmers, and a specific infusion of capital into the dairy farmers themselves. What the USDA has done, and I've written to Secretary Vilsack to make sure that as we purchase safer school lunch programs, that we look at the pork industry to try to purchase more and more of those products. And there's some response. We've spent about $150 million, which scratches the surface, but we have purchased more pork, trying to help with the demand side of it. But certainly there are things we do. But fundamentally, we've got to get to where those markets are open overseas. That's been the real problem as far as pork is concerned.
Another problem that Congress is looking like it's trying to tackle is climate change. There's controversial and important climate change legislation before Congress. Where are you on that?
Well, I think there are things that we need to do today. And the cap and trade bill that was passed in the House.
Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, this is the bill that was put forth supposedly to address climate change, when in fact any projections show, even the people, the advocates of the bill say by the end of this century, 90 years from now, it'll change climate by about 0.2 of 1 degree. But what it does do is increase our utility rates here by 20 to 25%, cost Iowa about 17,000 jobs a year each of the next 20 years. What I think we have to do is kind of the all of the above approach, and to look at conservation, to make sure that we're doing everything to be efficient, whether it be winterizing our homes, more efficient vehicles, all of those things. We have to look at renewable, and when we wind, solar, ethanol, biomass, soy, diesel, all of those things. We have to look at nuclear energy, the most environmentally friendly source of electrical generation we can have. We haven't built a new plant in this country for 30 years because of the restrictions as far as licensing. But we also have to go after the resources we have in such abundance here. When you talk about oil and gas, we have 3 times the amount of oil in this country